Emma held her portfolio tightly against her chest, her fingers trembling not from cold, but from the quiet storm inside her. She had promised herself she would never let desperation show, not after everything she'd been through. Yet today felt different. Today was her last chance. Outside, tall buildings rose like silver giants, their windows reflecting the gray clouds. The city was awake, alive, indifferent. Somewhere among those towers was the address she had repeated in her head. All morning, Layton Foundation for Art and Culture, the place where her life might finally change. When the taxi stopped, Emma paid quickly, stepping out under the awning of a modern glass building. Her reflection looked back at her in the mirror-like surface, auburn hair tucked in a low bun, brown eyes sharp with determination, and a black coat that had seen better days. She straightened it and whispered to herself, "Smile, Emma. Don't let them see the nerves." Inside, the lobby gleamed with quiet luxury, soft lighting, marble floors, and the faint scent of jasmine from hidden diffusers. Every movement felt deliberate, from the receptionist's polite smile to the gentle hum of a nearby elevator. Emma gave her name, and within minutes, a young assistant appeared to escort her upstairs. "Mr. Layton is waiting," the assistant said with a professional calm that made Emma's pulse quicken. Mr. Layton. Name alone carried weight in London's upper circles. Sam Layton, investor, philanthropist, and one of the youngest millionaires in Europe. His foundation had revived forgotten artists, restored neglected museums, and hosted some of the most exclusive charity events in the city. But his reputation wasn't without shadows. Every gossip column had its version of him, charming yet cold, private to the point of arrogance, and the favorite subject of endless rumors, especially about his sexuality. Emma had heard them all. Some said he preferred men. Others claimed he had sworn off love after being betrayed. None of it mattered to her, or so she thought. She only wanted the job. The elevator doors opened on the top floor, revealing an office that felt more like an art gallery than a workplace. Sculptures lined the corners, and abstract paintings covered the walls, each piece worth more than she could earn in a year. At the center, behind a minimalist desk of dark wood and glass, stood the man himself, Sam Layton. He was taller than she expected, his posture effortlessly confident. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd run a hand through it too many times. In his suit, charcoal gray fit him like it had been cut from shadow. But it was his eyes that caught her off guard. Gray, almost silver, calm yet sharp, like he could see through layers of pretense. "Miss Taylor," he greeted her, his voice smooth but detached. "You're early." "I thought it would be better than being late," Emma replied, setting her portfolio on the desk. He studied her for a moment. Not rudely, but like an artist evaluating a painting. "I've seen your work," he said finally. "Your exhibitions at the Shoreline Gallery were honest, raw, but this project will be different, bigger. It's not about small truths anymore. It's about spectacle." "I can handle spectacle," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, his lips curved slightly. "Can you? Most people drown in it." Emma opened her portfolio and began laying out her designs for the upcoming charity exhibition. "I've curated over 40 shows across Europe. I know how to balance art and attention. Your event will not only raise money, it will be remembered." Sam leaned back, crossing his arms. "You speak with confidence. Would you hire me if I didn't?" A quiet pause followed, the kind that stretches until someone breaks it. Then, unexpectedly, Sam smiled. It wasn't the polished smile of a billionaire at a gala. It was smaller, softer, as if something about her had amused him touché. He said, "Tell me, Miss Taylor, do you always challenge potential employers?" "Only when they underestimate me." "Good," he murmured, his gaze lingering for a second longer than necessary. "I like people who aren't afraid to speak." He stood, walking toward the large window behind him. The skyline stretched endlessly, framed by rain and steel. "You must have heard things about me," he said, without turning. "Everyone has." Emma hesitated. "Rumors don't interest me, Mr. Layton, only the work," of course, he said quietly. Then, with a tone that carried something she couldn't quite name, he added, "But they interest you enough to mention them." Her pulse jumped. She hadn't realized her voice had shifted. "I didn't." He turned then, leaning slightly against the wall beside her, his eyes fixed on hers. "Do you still think I'm gay?" The air between them thickened. The question wasn't playful. It was deliberate, almost intimate. Emma opened her mouth, then closed it again, unsure how to answer. For the first time since entering the room, she felt stripped of her practiced composure. "I don't think about your personal life," she managed finally. "It's not my concern." Sam studied her face for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Good. Let's keep it that way." Returned to his desk, his tone shifting back to business. "You're hired. But understand this. I expect perfection. The exhibition is in 3 weeks. You'll have full access to the Foundation's resources. My assistant, Lila, will coordinate with you. Don't disappoint me." Emma blinked, still catching her breath. "That's it? No contract? No formal interview? I don't need one. I trust my instincts. And right now, they're telling me you won't let me down." He picked up a file and started reviewing it, dismissing her as if the conversation had ended. Emma gathered her things, still unsettled. As she turned to leave, his voice followed her softly. "Oh." And Miss Taylor, she looked back. "Next time someone asks about the rumors," he said, his lips curving slightly, "tell them it's none of their business." The elevator doors closed behind her, sealing her in silence. Only when the floor number began to change did she realize she had been holding her breath. She exhaled slowly, the echo of his words still burning in her chest. The following days were a blur of work. Emma threw herself into preparation with a precision that left little room for distraction. The charity exhibition was to feature a collection of modern reinterpretations of classical art, a bold concept that had to impress. London's elite while still feeling authentic, Sam had given her creative freedom, but that freedom came with the weight of expectation. She worked closely with his team, reviewing proposals, scouting locations, and managing fragile egos of artists who demanded too much and delivered too little. Yet despite the chaos, she couldn't ignore one constant: Sam's presence. He wasn't always there physically, but she could feel him in every decision, every whisper of approval or critique passed down through his assistant. When he did appear, brief, unexpected visits to the exhibition hall, his energy filled the space. He moved with quiet confidence, his attention precise, his comments short but impactful. And whenever their eyes met, Emma felt something stir that she couldn't quite suppress. One night, after another exhausting 12-hour shift, she found herself alone in the half-finished exhibition space. Paintings leaned against the walls, still wrapped in protective plastic. The smell of fresh paint and sawdust mixed with the low hum of the city outside. She sank onto a crate, rubbing her temples. "Still here?" a voice asked from behind her. She turned sharply. Sam stood near the doorway, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up. He looked different, less like the untouchable billionaire, more like a man who had been thinking too much. "Couldn't sleep," Emma said, forcing a small smile. "Might as well work." He walked closer, the sound of his footsteps soft on the concrete floor. "You work harder than most people I know. I don't have the luxury of being lazy." He tilted his head, studying her. "Luxury's overrated? It's easy for you to say," she said, her voice sharper than intended. "You've had it your whole life." To her surprise, he didn't react with offense. Instead, he looked at her quietly for a moment before replying. "You think money protects people, Miss Taylor? It doesn't. It just hides their wounds behind prettier walls." His tone carried something raw, almost painful. She regretted her words immediately. "I didn't mean yes you did," he said softly, but there was no anger in it. "And you were right too. People like me are used to being judged. Sometimes we deserve it." He stopped beside her, his gaze drifting over the unfinished exhibits. "Do you believe in art as truth?" "I believe art shows the truth we try to hide," she said. Sam nodded slowly. "Then maybe that's why I built this foundation. To hide my lies behind beautiful truths." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights flickered through the tall windows, casting patterns of gold across the floor. Then Sam turned to her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You challenge me, Emma Taylor." "Not many people do." "I don't mean to." "Yes, you do. And that's what makes you interesting." Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. There was something in his voice, a softness beneath the confidence, a flicker of vulnerability he didn't show anyone else. She wanted to ask about it, to peel back the layers, but she stayed silent. Some things, she realized, were better discovered slowly. He looked at his watch. "It's late. Let me drive you home. I can take a taxi." "Consider it a thank you for saving my exhibition from becoming a disaster." She hesitated, then nodded. "Fine." Outside, the rain had started again. The city glistened under streetlights as they walked toward his car, a sleek black Aston Martin that purred when it came alive. Inside, the smell of leather and faint cologne filled the silence. They didn't speak at first, but the quiet wasn't uncomfortable. It felt suspended, heavy with things unsaid. As they stopped at a red light, Sam glanced at her. "You're not like the others." She frowned. "What others?" "The people who smile at me because they think they should. You talk to me like I'm human." Emma turned her gaze to the window. "Maybe that's because I don't need anything from you." He smiled faintly. "Everyone needs something. Not me." His eyes lingered on her profile. "Then you're the rarest kind of person I've met." The light turned green, and the car moved forward, smooth and silent. When they reached her small flat in Camden, she thanked him quietly and reached for the door handle, but his voice stopped her. "Emma," she turned, "do you still think I'm gay?" The question hit her again, softer this time, but no less charged. He was smiling, that calm, knowing smile, but his eyes searched hers for something real. She could have brushed it off, could have laughed or changed the subject. Instead, she met his gaze steadily. "I don't think I know who you are," she said. "Not yet." He nodded slowly, as if her answer pleased him. "Then maybe that's worth finding out." She stepped out into the rain, her heart pounding as the door closed behind her. The car drove away, its taillights disappearing into the wet London night, leaving her standing on the quiet street, drenched not from the rain, but from the sudden realization that something in her life had shifted, something she couldn't explain, but couldn't deny. That night, Emma lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every look, every charged silence. She told herself it was just curiosity, nothing more. But when she closed her eyes, she saw his smile. The question lingering in the air like smoke, she whispered to the empty room, half in denial, half in confession, "I don't know what to think anymore." Outside, the rain fell harder, washing the city clean. But inside, in the quiet of her small apartment, something had already begun, something that no storm could wash away. The days after the first meeting moved like a slow current, pulling Emma and Sam closer, with work at the center. The exhibition grew under Emma's careful hands. Each piece she chose had a light and a voice. Each installation had a reason. Sam watched more often now, sometimes without entering a room, sometimes appearing like a shadow that shaped the air. His presence was a punctuation in the long stretches of her day. Emma found that she looked forward to his visits, even when they were brief. She liked his small corrections, the way he named a color he thought should be stronger, the way he suggested a quiet corner needed a louder truth. In these moments, he stopped being a rumor and became a person who cared about how the light hit a painting. She also noticed that, when he smiled, his chin softened, and something private moved behind his eyes. They spent long nights at the foundation. Lila, his assistant, kept everything turning. She was efficient and kind, a hinge that held schedules, calls, and precise requests. She would leave at midnight, and the place would seem to exhale. The staff who stayed later became a small family. Emma often carried a thermos of coffee and a stack of printouts. She sometimes ate thin sandwiches at a table littered with paint sample cards. A week into the preparations, a magazine published a short rumor piece about Sam, hinting at an intimate life that the tabloids could not define. It was careless, written for clicks, and it mentioned Emma by name, saying she was in the circle of people who knew him best. When Emma read it, she felt a cold knot in her stomach. The article was not cruel, but it was invasive. It spoke of parties and private guests, and hinted at a life that showed nothing true. She tried not to let it show. She answered calls, rescheduled deliveries, and focused on lighting plans. She told herself that the work was her fortress. Yet the words of strangers floated around her like dust that refused to settle. Sam noticed the change. He did not comment publicly, but the way he looked at her in the office sometimes carried the weight of apology and sometimes the weight of regret. He began to arrive earlier and linger later. Once he walked into the gallery while she was testing the angle of a spotlight. He stood beside her, silent, for a long moment, watching the way light split a canvas. "Did the lights decide to betray you?" he asked softly. "They have their moods," she said, "and so do people." He turned to her. The air between them seemed narrower than the room because of all the things left unsaid. "I should have been more careful with what the world knows about me," he said. "I never wanted you to be dragged into the noise." "I did not ask to be in the headlines," she replied. Her voice was small. "But the work matters more than gossip," still he said. "I do not want you to worry because of me." She looked at him, seeing the fatigue at the edges of his face. "Why would you let rumors grow if they hurt you?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "People like stories. They prefer them to truth because a story is easier to buy." That night, the rain loosened the city into small rivers. Emma walked back to her flat with a bag of printouts under her arm and a tightness in her chest. She tried to count the moments when she had felt safe around Sam. They were small, a gentle compliment, a hand offered to steady a ladder, a laugh at a bad pun. She told herself that these things were not enough to change her life. Still, she found the thought of him softening her nights. The week of the exhibition drew closer. The pieces arrived in trucks that smelled of wood and oil and new canvas. Emma worked with the handlers as if orchestrating a small army. She woke with plans and slept with lists. She learned to measure time by paint drying. Sam assisted in ways both visible and invisible. Sometimes he approved budgets without comment. Other times he argued for a local painter whose work he liked. He stepped quietly into conversations with donors and with artists. His voice carried authority. When he spoke, the room listened. One evening, a technical problem forced the curator team to stay after midnight. A crate with a large mixed-media piece produced a strange sound when placed. The sculpture's base was uneven, and the piece threatened to tilt. Emma and two technicians wrestled it into position. Sam appeared while they were still struggling, sleeves rolled, not the formal man of the office, but practical and steady. He guided the team's hands with calm directions. When the final bolt tightened and the sculpture stood, Sam exhaled as if he had been holding his breath. "Good," he said. "That will hold." Emma laughed, relieved and foolish. "For now." He glanced at her and the laugh faded into something like thought. "Emma," he said, "are you hungry? I know a place that makes a simple soup. It is near. It closes soon." She looked at the clock and saw it was nearly 2 in the morning. She wanted rest. She also wanted to accept his offer for reasons she did not yet understand. "Soup sounds like a plan," she said. The soup place was tiny and warm, with wooden stools and a menu handwritten on a board. They sat at the corner and ate quietly. The light from the single bulb made Sam's cheekbones look like cut stone. Conversation drifted at first towards the exhibition, then slipped into personal corners. He spoke of trivial things, of the oddities of fame, and of the small habits that unsettled him. Emma answered with stories of a childhood in a small town, of a mother who taught her to value good coffee, and of a first job that taught her to love patience. "Do you ever wish to leave all this?" she asked suddenly, not sure why the question fit. He turned the spoon slowly. "Leave what?" "The city, the foundation, the expectations." He looked at her then, as if seeing her for the first time. The light softened in his eyes. "Yes," he said. "I have left it in my mind. Sometimes I walk through empty rooms in my head and imagine a place where people are not waiting to judge me, but I always return. My life is tangled with so many things that untangling would hurt others. Emma felt a small ache. You make it sound heavy to be you. It is, he said. I wanted the foundation to be more than light shows and donors. I hoped it would be a safe place. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the world insists on using it as mirror. They finished their soup and walked back through wet streets. The quiet between them felt less guarded. A shared warmth grew like a secret. They reached her block, and Sam stopped near the corner. Do you mind if I walk you up? He asked. She nodded. The walk up to flights of narrow stairs felt intimate. She did not know how to talk about what she felt. At her door, she turned with the keys midway. Sam, she said, why do you let rumors be about you? He hesitated, then answered simply, I do not control what people say. I control what I answer. She looked into his face and saw an honesty that wanted to be held. Then she shut her door and left him in the hallway with a small silhouette of light. The next day, the tabloids shifted tone. An online outlet published photos of Emma and Sam entering the foundation late one night. The images were grainy and taken from angles meant to imply secrecy. The captions suggested intimacy. The article did not claim anything explicit, but the implication was clear. A rich man with a private life and a curator who might be more than hired hands. Emma read the article on a phone given to her by a nervous assistant. She felt heat rise to her face. The comment section filled with speculation. Lila hurried in with messages and calls. We can issue a statement, Lila said. We can deny. No, Emma said. Not yet. Denials keep the story alive. Sam arrived at the office that morning with a stack of newspapers, each with a different headline. He placed them on the table and looked at Emma without anger. I am sorry, he said. They will use anything. This could ruin the show, she said, and it can ruin me. He paused, then walked to the window, looking as if the city spoke to him. When he turned back, his face was quiet. When you work with me, you risk my storms, he said. I cannot promise that the world will not try to drag you into my weather. I can promise I will not hide from what is right. She wanted to ask what that meant. She wanted to ask whether he would stand with her publicly. But the question stuck in her throat because she knew how much he had to lose. The week before the opening, a misfire happened. A controversial critic misread a piece and wrote a sharp review. A leak suggested the foundation spent more on imports than on local artists. The board summoned Sam. Emma sat in the corner of a meeting room and watched a man she was learning to love be handled by people who used other people's lives like chess pieces. He did not shout. He did not beg. He stood and defended his choices with clarity. He spoke for art and for the foundation. At points, his voice wobbled with fatigue, but never with surrender. After the board meeting, he walked Emma out of the building. The sky had opened into rain, and the city smelled of wet stone. They walked without speaking, and then the elevator between floors halted. The technical team had warned of a brief power issue, but not a full stop. The car shuddered and stilled. Lights inside the box glowed dim. Oh, great, a voice muttered behind them. Sam put his hand on the control panel and pressed the buttons. No response. The technicians downstairs sent a message that they were aware and would unlock the car. The delay stretched, and the air in the elevator tightened like a held breath. They will be here soon, Emma said. Her voice felt small in the metallic box. She sat on a small folding crate and crossed her legs. Sam leaned against the wall, arms folded, and watched her. In the silence, they felt like two animals, catching comfort from proximity. I hate waiting, he said finally. Most people do, she replied. She could smell his cologne, soft and warm. For a moment, she wondered how it would be to be close without a glass desk between them, to know without a job title that separated them. Her heartbeat sped, an echo of the thought. The minutes ticked. The light fixture hummed. Her phone battery read 20%, and the screen showed a dozen unread messages. Sam pulled a paperback from his bag and read the dedication page. Emma noticed his hands. They were not the hands of a man who had always had everything. They had small scars and a nervousness in the way they fiddled with the corner of a page. What did the dedication say? She asked when he closed the book. For Lydia, who taught me to see colors in the dark, he read. His thumb smoothed the paper. She was my art teacher when I was a child. You had an art teacher? I had many teachers, he said. Some of them did not keep their promises. What do you mean? His eyes found hers. I had someone who promised loyalty and then turned it into currency. She felt the chill of those words. Was it someone at the foundation? He looked away. No. It was someone who mattered to me and then took from me. After that, I built walls. Walls can keep shelter, she said softly, but they can also keep warmth out. I know, he replied. The hum of the elevator filled the small silence. Time passed and the technicians sent updates that the power technicians were delayed by traffic. They would arrive in 15 minutes. The elevator was too small for movement. Emma shifted, trying not to think of the headlines and the toxic swirl that might wait beyond the doors. Sam, she said, why do people believe a story so quickly? He considered. Because believing is cheap. It costs them little to think they know you. And you. He looked at her steadily. I used the story the world told about me to hide a truth I could not bear to share. What truth? That I was broken, he said. That I lost someone I loved, and that betrayal taught me to hide behind a mask. Her hand found his knee without thinking. The contact was small and electric. He looked at her hand and then up at her face. His breath changed. I thought that if I could build enough museums and stage enough galas, I could drown the hurt in noise. He said, but noise only disguises things for a time. The elevator grew warmer. The light flickered. She wanted to touch his face to see if he was real. Instead, she asked, do you miss them? Every day, he admitted. I miss the way mornings used to be simple and the way trust used to feel safe. I am sorry, she said. Words felt flimsy. He smiled small. You do not have to be sorry. You have already been brave. You stepped into my world and did not blink. They were quiet for a beat, and the air between them tightened into a question that neither dared speak. Then the lights suddenly blinked and the elevator shuddered. A soft mechanical noise worked through the shaft, and somewhere above them, a tool struck metal. The car lurched and continued. The doors sighed open on a floor bathed in blue emergency light. They stepped out shaking, the city a blur of wet lights. Sam turned to her with a look as direct as a confession. He reached for both her hands and held them there. Emma, he said, I have been careful with my heart for so long that I stopped letting myself feel its edges. You make me feel things I thought I had sealed away. Her pulse jumped and she met his eyes. The noise of the foundation seemed distant. For a breath, the two of them stood with the world reduced to the small circle of their hands. Do you still think I am gay? He asked again, but this time his voice was not a test. It was a plea. She considered all the rumors. The headlines, the nights of work, the simple shared soup, and the way his voice had softened when he spoke of loss. She thought of the way his hands had been at his book, the scars, the tired bones of a man who had learned too much too soon. She remembered the way he had defended the artists and how he had tried to build a safe place. She looked at him and smiled. Not to be coy, but to be honest. I think you are more complicated than any label, she said. I think you are capable of love and fear and making mistakes. I think you are, Sam. The answer was small, but it opened something. His face softened, relief and hope, making it honest and open. Gently, he leaned forward and kissed her on the forehead. The kiss was not a claim. It was a promise. The touch warmed her in a way that felt like spring after a long winter. She did not pull away. When they separated, both of them felt as if something had shifted. The rumor that had seemed like a wall now looked like glass. They had not declared anything to the world, but in that confined hallway, with the scent of paint and late-night coffee around them, they had acknowledged a truth. They were a possibility to each other. They walked out into the rain together. The city swallowed their steps, and for a moment, the noise of the tabloids felt distant. There were two people with different pasts walking toward the uncertain. Behind them, the foundations stood lit and waiting for morning. Full of promises and the quiet ache of secrets, the exhibition day would come soon. The world would watch, and the stories would not stop. But for a night, Emma and Sam had found a small shelter. They had painted the beginning of something fragile and brave inside the hush of shared confessions. As they parted at the curb, Sam squeezed her hand once and said, "Sleep. We will face the noise together." Emma watched his car disappear into the rain. She felt tired and alive. The rumor still lived in the headlines, and the critics still whispered, but inside her chest, a new line had been drawn. A heart that had been cautious now beat with a small, stubborn courage. She climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment and stood at the window, watching the city breathe. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to imagine a life where her work mattered and her heart could find shelter, not in headlines, but in quiet acts of truth. The next morning would bring lights and guests, and with them the risk that a secret could shatter everything. But in the soft spill of dawn, she promised herself this: she would not run from what felt real. The morning of the exhibition dawned sharp and silver, the kind of London morning that carried the scent of wet stone and expectation. The Leighton Foundation was alive with movement decorators. Caterers, photographers, and reporters fluttered through the marble halls like restless birds. Cameras flashed, screens glowed, and the murmur of excitement echoed off the tall ceilings. Emma stood in the middle of the gallery, staring at the finished display. Her display, a living symphony of light, texture, and emotion. Paintings hung like whispers of the human soul. Sculptures stood proud and fragile. Every corner spoke of truth, vulnerability, and beauty. It was her finest work, and perhaps her last, if the rumors destroyed her career. She hadn't slept. Not since the story broke. 3 tabloids had published photographs of her and Sam, leaving the foundation together late at night. The headlines were cruel. The millionaire's secret mistress? Curator? Or companion? The man who can't choose. She'd tried to ignore them, but the damage was already done. Sponsors hesitated. The board whispered. Even some artists had called to ask if they were being used for a scandal. Lila tried to shield her, but Emma could feel the weight of judgment in every glance. Now, as she adjusted the final label beside a sculpture, she saw Sam across the room, surrounded by donors, his expression calm, unreadable. He wore a tailored black suit, but his eyes, when they found hers, carried a question she couldn't answer. "Will you still trust me?" Emma turned away, pretending to check her notes. That afternoon, the exhibition opened to select press. It was everything they'd worked for: elegant, meaningful, alive. Critics murmured approval. Investors nodded. Photographers filled memory cards, yet under the polished veneer, the air buzzed with gossip. Every smile had an undertone, every compliment an unspoken question. As Emma guided a group through the gallery, she overheard 2 reporters whispering near the abstract portraits. "They say she lives in his flat now," one said. "Please," the other laughed. "You'd think someone like him would risk all this for a curator? He's either hiding something or proving something." Emma stopped walking. The words burned. "Miss Taylor." One of the guests asked, "Are you all right?" She forced a smile. "Yes, just a little tired." She continued the tour, her voice steady, but inside something cracked. She had built her career on integrity, and now everything she'd earned was reduced to rumor and insinuation. By late evening, the exhibition transformed into a gala. The lights dimmed, music flowed, and the city's elite arrived in glittering waves. Emma stood near the staircase, watching people move through her work as if she were invisible. Sam approached quietly, a glass of champagne in his hand. His tie was gone, his shirt collar open. He looked tired but composed. Too composed. "You shouldn't be alone," he said softly. She didn't turn. "I'm used to it," he sighed. "Emma, don't." Her voice trembled, but she steadied it. "They're tearing me apart out there. Every person here looks at me like I'm some kind of scandal." "And let them," he said. "You know the truth. The truth." She turned on him. "What truth, Sam? The one you hide behind rumors? Or the one you never tell?" His jaw tightened. "I was trying to protect you by saying nothing." Her voice cracked. You let them believe I'm your secret. You let them destroy my name because you were afraid of what it would cost you." The silence that followed felt heavy enough to break glass. Sam looked at her, something raw flickering behind his calm exterior. "You think I care about my image?" he said quietly. "You'd think I'd let you burn just to save myself? Then why didn't you say something?" she whispered. "Why didn't you tell them what we are?" He looked down at his hands. "Because I didn't know what we were." It hurt more than she expected. Emma stepped back, her heart pounding. "Then maybe neither do I." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the crowd of smiling strangers. Outside, the rain had started again, soft at first, then relentless. She walked until her heels ached, until the city blurred into wet lights. When she finally stopped, she found herself near the river, the Thames dark and wide, the water whispering secrets to the night. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly, her reflection trembling in the current. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. "Lila, Emma." The voice came urgent through the rain. "You need to come back. Something's happening." "Sam, he's about to speak to the press." Emma froze. "What?" "He called an emergency conference. He said he's going to set the record straight. Now, in front of everyone." Her heart stumbled. "No, he wouldn't. He would," Lila said. "And he's doing it for you." The line went dead. By the time Emma returned to the foundation, the main hall was filled with people, journalists, cameras, and curious onlookers. The air buzzed with tension. Sam stood at the podium under the bright lights alone. His expression was calm, but there was steel in his posture. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice low but steady. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I understand there's been speculation about my personal life and about my colleague, Miss Emma Taylor." A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd. Emma slipped in quietly near the back, her heart thundering. "I've built my life behind walls," Sam continued. "Walls of money, silence, and control. They protected me, or so I believed. But lately, I've realized that walls don't protect truth. They only hide it." He paused, scanning the crowd, then found Emma in the back. Their eyes met. "The truth is simple," he said, his voice softening. "Emma Taylor is not my mistress. She is not my scandal. She is the reason this exhibition exists. She is the reason I remembered what it means to care, to feel, to live honestly again." The room fell utterly silent. He stepped closer to the microphones, his tone unwavering. "And as for me, I am not what the tabloids make me. I'm a man who made mistakes. I used rumors to hide pain. I let them define me because it was easier than telling the truth. But I won't hide anymore." He looked back toward Emma, his voice barely above a whisper. "The truth is, I love her." Gasps scattered through the crowd. Flashbulbs exploded. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. But Sam didn't move. His gaze stayed fixed on Emma, steady and unflinching. Emma's breath caught. For a moment, the world seemed to fade, the noise, the lights, the chaos, until there was only him. The man who had hidden behind charm and silence, now standing unguarded in front of the world. Lila touched Emma's arm gently. "Go," she whispered. Emma stepped forward slowly through the sea of flashing cameras. Every step felt heavy, deliberate, real. When she reached him, Sam lowered the microphone. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly. "Yes, I did," he murmured. "Because for once, I wanted something to be true without hiding behind wealth or reputation. I wanted you to know." Her eyes glistened. "And what if it destroys everything?" He smiled faintly. "Then we build again. But this time, together." The crowd watched as she reached for his hand. Cameras captured it. Not scandal, not spectacle, but truth. In the days that followed, the headlines changed. What had once been gossip became admiration. Millionaire defends curator in brave public declaration. Critics praised not only the exhibition, but the courage behind it. Sponsors returned. The foundation's donations doubled. And though the media still speculated about their relationship, the tone had shifted. The story had become one of honesty, not rumor, But for Emma, fame was no longer the goal. When the exhibition ended, she made a quiet decision. She turned down Sam's offer to stay as lead curator and instead pursued her dream, opening her own gallery for young, undiscovered artists. It took 6 months, a lot of sleepless nights, and every ounce of courage she had. But the day the gallery opened, a sign above the door read simply, "The Taylor House of Art, where every truth finds its light." On the opening evening, as guests drifted through the rooms, Emma stood near a wall covered in small personal works from local artists. The air was warm, the laughter genuine. This was hers, built not from scandal or privilege, but from heart, still teaching people how to see beauty. A familiar voice said behind her. She turned, and there he was. Sam stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, wearing a simple black coat. No entourage. No photographers. Just him. "You came," she said, smiling softly. "I promised I'd always show up when it mattered," he replied. His eyes scanned the gallery. "It's beautiful, Emma. You did it." She laughed lightly. "Without your millions, too?" He smiled. "That's what makes it perfect." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the people move through her space. Then Sam reached into a small bag he carried and pulled out a wrapped canvas. "I have something for your first wall," he said. She took it carefully, unwrapping the brown paper. Inside was a painting, a portrait of her. Not polished, not glamorous, but real. Her eyes were focused, her expression soft, a trace of sadness in her smile. In the background was the faint outline of a gallery, light spilling through rain. "You painted this?" she whispered. He nodded. "During those weeks we worked together. I never showed it. It was the first thing I'd painted in years." Emma looked at it, her throat tightening. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wasn't ready," he said. "But I am now." She hung the painting herself, right at the entrance. It was the first thing visitors would see. Not her as a rumor, not her as someone's muse, but her as herself. When she turned back, Sam was still there, watching her with that same quiet intensity. "So," she said softly, "what happens now?" He smiled faintly. "Now we live. Without headlines. Without fear." She stepped closer. "And if the world starts talking again?" He shrugged. "Let them. We know our truth." They stood there, two people who had weathered storms, rich and poor, flawed and human, stripped of pretense. Outside, the rain began again, tapping softly against the windows like an echo from another life. Emma looked up at him. "Do you still think I'm too stubborn?" He grinned. "Always. But that's what saved me." She laughed, the sound light and full. And when he reached for her hand, she didn't hesitate. They walked together to the front door of the gallery, pausing beneath the sign that bore her name. The city stretched before them, messy, unpredictable, alive. He looked at her, eyes full of quiet admiration. "You know," he said, "for years I thought art was about perfection. You taught me it's about truth. You taught me that sometimes," she whispered, "truth is worth every rumor." He leaned in, kissed her gently. Not a grand declaration this time, but something real, warm. Grounding outside, the rain fell harder, washing the streets clean. Inside, her gallery glowed, filled with laughter, light and love that no headline could distort. And as they stepped out together into the night, Emma realized something simple and extraordinary. The story was no longer about the millionaire's secret,